How's it going, guys? Billy Pinckney here with this episode of Billy the Batboy's Corner, presented by Up On Game Sports. And today we have a very special guest, and that's Richie Shaffer. Played a couple years in the big leagues for the Tampa Bay Rays, and we dive into the mental side of sports, mental side of baseball, what he's doing to help out the younger players, and also his career and the kind of experiences he's had in order to ultimately take this new step in his journey of teaching these young players. So without further ado, here's Richie Shaffer. All right, guys, we're here alongside Richie Shaffer, former Tampa Bay Ray. Appreciate you taking the time.
Wow, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you were part of USA's 16U team. I mean, how special is it to be a part of that club and a prestigious group of guys?
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. It was a really good experience. That's one of those first indications when you're young coming up that you really get to see some of the talent that's out there in the country and kind of get to gauge yourself against some of the best. And it was really cool. I remember playing against those guys, as my career progressed, as all of our careers progressed, and it was cool to stay in touch with a fair amount of them.
Who were some of the guys who really turned out to be some really solid players as well?
There was a bunch of guys on that team. Nick Franklin and I played together on the Rays. Nolan Fontana played for a good while. Max Stassi, he's with the Angels right now, still catching. There's a couple other guys on there. Colton Kane had a pretty good minor league career for a while. There was a bunch of guys on there. It was a really talented group, man. It was cool.
Yeah, well, you were drafted then by the Dodgers in 25th round. You decided to go to Clemson, spend some time in college ball, but then it worked out. You were drafted 25th overall, so you go from the 25th round to 25th overall. What led to that decision to go to college and get some time in there?
Yeah, that was a tough decision, man. It's a really tough decision when you're 18 and trying to figure out, what the next 20 years of your life's going to look like, and trying to make this, very, very different decision in terms of the path you're about to take. And I had a very strong commitment to school. I just always really wanted to attend college, and I fell in love with Clemson when I first visited, and my commitment to Clemson was just so strong. It was going to be really difficult to get me away from that. And I had a couple calls before the draft. The draft was different. You got to remember, this was 2009, right? I mean, feels like eternity ago. I feel like an old fart now. But and back then there was they would call you ahead of time and said, hey, if we take you at this pick and give you, this bonus, like, will you sign, yes or no? And so I had a couple of those calls and turned down, made some really difficult decisions, but turned down, at the time, what seemed like a crazy offer. But I just was, really convinced that I could go and improve my situation, and just really wanted to go to school. And it was the best possible thing that could have happened to me, for sure.
What were a couple of the lessons that you learned while playing for them and just your overall experience in college baseball?
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about college baseball, and then especially at Clemson, was you learn, this ability to win, right? That's like this team oriented winning version of baseball that you just don't get in the minor leagues, right? The moment that you become a minor league baseball player, it becomes a profession. It becomes a very individualistic pursuit where, like, I'm just going to do whatever I can do for myself to get to the big leagues, right? That's the strange route, is like you go from college where everything's very team centric and you do whatever you can to try to help the team win. And then you go to the minor leagues. It's this very individual, very personal thing. But then you get to the big leagues, you switch right back to winning, right? So if you don't have, I think there's a bit of a learning curve for guys that don't go to college, or maybe didn't play for super competitive high school programs. This ideology of like learning how to play within a team framework and this ability to like learn to win is something that you need at the big league level, and you just don't necessarily learn in the minor league level. And frankly, you shouldn't spend time learning because it's such a individual task.
Do you think the minor league should focus more on the importance of winning and having that type of culture rather than just progress of each individual player? I mean, I know you played indie ball too, and that's more about winning. So, you kind of get that again when you're playing an independent ball or college ball, but in the minor leagues, it's a little bit different.
I don't think you'll ever be able to recreate that, to be honest. I think the way the minor leagues is structured, I don't think there's ever a way where you can prioritize that winning mentality, because at the end of the day, everyone is just trying to compete for the same, 300 jobs in the big leagues, right? I mean, there's just not a way to do it to kind of recreate that, because when you're at college playing, you're playing for this, higher purpose of playing for your university and playing for all the tradition that's, um, before you, and you feel this camaraderie with your teammates and everything. And then on the indie ball side, when you're playing an indie ball, a lot of guys are playing it to like rediscover their love for the game after a career, or they're attempting to use that to springboard themselves into other careers. And I just think both of those routes, the indie ball route and the college route, both have this less of a big league pursuit and a more just playing for the love of the game built into it. And I just don't think that's anything you can recreate in the minor leagues, because there's just the stakes are just so high in the minor leagues, because at the end of the day, it's you're trying to work your way up to get to the big leagues, and that's like the ultimate goal. And your team could lose every single game in the minor leagues, but if you hit 350 with 30 home runs and you get promoted, it's like, that was a really bummer of a year for the team, but like, hey, I played great. I'm going to get promoted and continue to pursue my dream. So I just don't think there's a way to do that.
Well, you did play in the Cape Cod League back in 2011. I mean, what can you say about the competition in that league and just overall the atmosphere that brings to the table?
Yeah, the Cape was so fun, man. That was really cool. I played in Chatham, and it was just the whole vibe in the Cape is cool, because it just feels it has its own little world up there, this own little environment, and all the tradition of the Cape. It brings out the best of all the guys there. You know what I mean? So you're bringing in a group of super talented guys all playing against each other in this, very. There's such a summer feel to it where it's like, it's fun, and yeah, it's competitive, but it's not, because you're in college. You have a taste of that, like, minor league, play for yourself, kind of show off a little bit, like show your skill set, but in a way that feels like really loose and fun, and just a way to really kind of show your personality.
2015, another big year for you. You had a solid year in AAA, playing for the Durham Bulls. I mean, that's a pretty historic organization too. A lot of history behind that. How meaningful was that for you to be a part of them?
Yeah, that was great. The Bulls fans, they feel like a major league fan base. I think with the movies and the tradition kind of behind Durham, I think they've have such a and frankly, without any major league team in the state of North Carolina, I think they really come out in droves. And there was, we got some great crowds at Durham. We would get 12, 14,000 people there. It was awesome. I loved playing there. And it's also one of the best minor league stadiums too. It's got such, character to it, and it's a great place to hit. So I loved it. The only problem was, like, at 5 o'clock, it had terrible shadows, but besides that, it was great. Yeah, I loved it.
Awesome. Well, you then, after that, got called up to the big leagues. Can you take us through the call-up story and when you found out that you're going to be a big leaguer?
Yeah. So I think it's maybe the fifth or sixth inning. I'm in Durham playing Gwinnett, I believe. And our team had just hit, and we were about to go out on a defense. And I remember my manager, Jared Sandberg, being like, "Hey, Shafe, you're done for the day." And I was like, "What?" Like, that was not a normal thing. And so in my head, I'm like, shoot, did I not run out of ground ball or something? Like, I thought I got benched for, like, I was like, did I hustle something? Did I do something wrong, or what's going on? And so then, like, it's all he said. He just said, "Hey, Shafe, you're done for the day." And I was very confused, and he just didn't say anything else to me. So I'm thinking, like, all right, either I messed up, or I was like, "Oh, hey, like, maybe I'm getting traded. Like, I don't know what's going on." And then he has this just little, grin on his face the whole time. And I'm like, "What's going on?" Then he comes over and he's like, "Hey, like, you're going to the big leagues." And everyone's like, "Yeah, let's go," whatever. And so all my buddies were giving me hugs and everything. It was pretty cool. And so then I kind of didn't know what to do. The game was still going on. So I went into the clubhouse and I packed up and just went back to my apartment. And I called my parents and my then fiance at the time right away and told them. And then that night, I remember just, like, sitting and staring at the ceiling and being like, Holy smokes, I'm going to the big leagues tomorrow. I was flying out to Chicago that morning, and it was, I mean, everything you could possibly imagine. It was a dream come true for sure, and just a whirlwind 48 hours when I got there. And, it was, I don't know. It's interesting when you pursue something for essentially your entire life, and you have that one sort of moment that feels like, hey, like you did it. No matter what happens for the rest of time, even if you never play another game, like you're always a big leaguer. No one can ever take that away. It's a really cool moment, really cool feeling.
Well, you got called up. So then, what was your first interaction when you got to the clubhouse?
Yeah, it was interesting because I wasn't in big league camp that year, so I didn't even really know many of the guys. I had been up there, I had been called up for minor league spring training here or there, maybe 5 or 6 games or whatever it may be. But I wasn't in camp that year, so like I didn't know a ton of the guys, but they were like, super warm and welcoming. And with the Rays, it was great because we were a relatively younger team. So it's not like you're going in there and there's just 10-year vets everywhere that are salty and just wanted to make your life miserable. Everyone was great. And I'll never forget, I had never used like the big league helmet, the one ear flap helmet, which is like coveted for all minor leaguers. Like the one ear flap helmet's like the best thing ever. But I had never used it before. So I had to hit batting practice with it just to like get used to it because it's such a different feel. And so I was like, I feel like an idiot out there taking batting practice with my helmet on. But it's like, I can't step into a batter's box for the first time wearing this like super foreign thing on my head. I have to wear this. And it like rattles so much. It fits so differently. So that was my number one thing I was so focused on. I was like, I got to get used to this helmet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, after that 2016 season, you experienced a little bit more of the cutthroat part of baseball, and that was when you were traded over to the Mariners with my guy Taylor Motter as well. Do you remember that trade and how that went down?
Yeah, so I remember it. It was I was driving. I think we were coming back from Clemson. We were like went to a football game or something. My wife and I were driving back home, and I get a call from Eric Neander, who was the either GM or assistant GM at the time, and he's like, "Hey, Rich, listen, just want to let you know that you've been traded to the Mariners, and we appreciate all the years you've been with us, and blah blah whatever." And I don't know. I remember it's a bittersweet feeling. I remember being excited that, someone was willing to trade pieces to get me, but there was this bitter feeling of feeling like the team that drafted you kind of felt like they given up on you a little bit, which that stung a little bit, but it's part of baseball, and they didn't see me as a piece of their future, and were willing to kind of trade me over somewhere else who wanted me at the time, which, the crazy part about it was I got traded to the Mariners and then quickly went through the DFA, like waiver wire craziness. I had one of those off season where I got DFA'd like 5 times in 5 weeks. It was just not all on paper transactions. None of these teams even saw me. So it was a really tough 2 months because I was like, there's so much uncertainty. I wasn't sure what was going on. There was constant bittersweet of like, all right, these teams want me, but then they don't want me, and this back and forth. And I couldn't really figure out what was going on. And at the very end, the business side of it was pretty obvious. So Cleveland was the last team I landed with, and they DFA'd me like a week before spring training started. And I look at it objectively. When I look at it, it's a smart business move because every team has had a chance to claim me 2-3 times or whatever. So they kind of knew that I would clear waivers and it opened up a spot. So as from a business side, I understand it makes sense. From the personal side, I'm like, God, that really stinks, man. Like, did you have to do that? Come on. I just went through this crazy whirlwind for 2.5 straight months. Like, cut me some slack here, but I get it from a business side, but that doesn't make it any less difficult to swallow.
So who makes those transactions when it comes to these minor league players? Is it the major league GM and his staff, or is it more of the coordinators on the minor league side that handle that side of things?
Well, that's sort of the piece that gets a little froggy is that every single time without fail, when you get claimed, it's like the big league GM calls you. And he's like, "Hey, so glad to have you. We can't wait to have you as an organization. And we see, you're going to fit right into our plans and yada, 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 whatever." And then when you get waived or when you get cut, it's like some like 30th dude down the totem pole you've never heard of. And he, I think he like stacks papers in the mailroom and he's like, hey, I'm supposed to tell you got cut. And I'm like, wait, where's Jeff who just told me I'm the man? Like, what happened to that guy? I thought I was the man. So that without fail happened every single time where it was like the GM called me for the good news and some very lowly guy I've never heard of called me to cut me. The only time that didn't happen, because I got to give credit where credit's due, is Cleveland, and Chernoff was the guy who called me to claim me, and he's the guy who told me at the end that they were going to make that move. So I appreciated that at least.
Well, at least they gave you the courtesy there.
Sure, yeah.
So you played with a lot of great guys throughout your career. Who were some who took you under their wing and really helped you out and guided you along the way?
Yeah, oh man, dude, I had so many guys. The first one that pops into my head was Longoria when I first got called up, because I was a third baseman all the way through my minor league career. When I got called up, I obviously wasn't going to displace him. I mean, he's a multiple Gold Glover, like one of the best to ever do it, and just an absolute stud, just as good as it comes. And I still really wanted to continue to work on my third base game because you just never know if I just always wanted, I was a third baseman. I still really wanted to keep doing it. So, I mean, he let me always work in with him and taught me so much about the position. And then not only that, but, was very, I'll never forget, like we're in New York and he calls me and he's like, hey, I'm going to the field. It's like noon. It was like super early. He's like, hey, I'm going to the field. You want to catch a cab with me and go? Because he was a guy that got to the field super early, got all his work in, did all that kind of stuff, and I appreciated that, and so I kind of took after that mentality. So I learned a ton from him, and then the minor leagues guys like Eric Kratz, who's just one of these guys that everyone loves, and he's just the type of guy that when he gets onto you, it's because he cares about you and that he wants you to succeed. And he's just been around a long time and wanted you to he's just seen it all. And, he's like, hey, knock that off or do whatever. And then, it was never something of malice. He was like, just legitimately cared about you. JP and CB, I had a bunch of guys that veteran dudes that really took me under their wing. It's one of the things that I wish I would have been able to stick around and still be playing like right now, because I wish I could pay that forward a little bit and help some younger guys. I never quite make it to that point.
Well, I want to touch on some things to help out the younger players, especially with hitting. Where do you feel the at-bat truly begins? Do you think it really begins in the on-deck circle, or do you think with modern-day analytics and scouting reports it begins much earlier?
Yeah, so I'm this huge proponent and believer of the mental game. Like, I just think the mental side of baseball is criminally just under discussed and underworked and undertaught and just neglected all the way across the board. And I was fortunate enough to have enough talent to get me to a certain point, but the mental side of baseball is definitely what, hindered my ability to fully grasp my potential. I think that's true across 99% of players. And so to me, I think that the at bat starts literally when you wake up. Like the moment you wake up, your at bats start pretty much instantly, right? And so I always break it down into these 5 categories. It's pre-game, pre-at bat, mid at bat, post at bat, post game. So there's 5 moments that happen. And each of those moments, there needs to be basically a continuous thought process of what's going on. And that's everything from the pregame stuff to, how you're eating, how you're preparing before the game, how you are, studying the pitchers or doing whatever. If you're a younger player and that's not something that's really available to you, something as simple as were you able to, do some tee work before the game? Or if you weren't, were you at least able to get some dry swings in, do some visualization, do something to start prepping yourself? And then pre-at bat, are we in the on-deck circle, timing the pitcher up? Are we trying to find his release point? Are we watching what pitches he's throwing the guy before you, see if we can pick up, some tendencies or whatever? And that type of logic it just goes right down the list, just pre-at-bat, during the at-bat, how you make adjustments post-at-bat. So, to me, it's this never-ending process. I don't think it ever starts or stops. It's the moment that the at-bat ends, we log it, we figure out how to use it positively for the next at-bat, and then continue moving.
Speaking of the mental side and everything, did you guys have mental coaches with the Rays that helped you guys out?
Yeah, we had some mental skills guys that would come in and try to teach us, some ways to build build consistency with our mindset. I think that's the big one, right? Because a lot of people get very up and down and very high highs and very low lows, and they have that roller coaster emotionally. And the more that we can stay even keel and neutral is important, because baseball, especially hitting, is such a game of failure that you have to be able to just absorb that over and over again and reframe it in a way that works for you. Because if you're just relying on, hitting a double in the gap to build your confidence, it's not going to work, right? You have to have that in place beforehand. So how do we do that if we're not getting hits already? So those guys would help you figure out ways to kind of create systems and methods to build that confidence ahead of time.
What are some ways that players from high school, college, and the pro level are able to stay consistent? Are there any like baseline things that each player could do in order to just have a consistent method in their approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dude, I'm literally building this whole mental training skill system. I'm calling it the six tool athlete. And so I already have my site built and everything for it. I'm going to build a whole system on this that basically goes very in depth about this whole entire thing. But I'll give you a piece of it. One thing that I like to do is it's called win stacking. So basically, what you do is you find any small win you can possibly get out of an at bat. Say you struck out, but on 0-2, the guy threw like a nasty curveball and you took it. And it was a really good pitch, but you took it. That's a small win, right? Yeah, you struck out, and there's not much that you can take from a strikeout. But if we can find a small win and we log it, and then the next time we come up, something else small happens, and we stack it on top of each other, and we just keep stacking wins over and over again and reframing anything that happens into a positive light. And then before you know it, you've got this, foundation of wins that you're building on top of, so that when you do hit that double in the gap, now you have something substantial to build upon. And so like to me, like this concept of win stacking and finding small wins to build on top of each other, no matter what happens, regardless of outcome, that I think is the foundation of how you build sort of sustainable confidence. That's not like reactive to what happens.
Yeah, I also want to touch on too what you look for when you're facing these pitchers. Is there something that you look for in order to try to expose them, and maybe certain things that you see in pitchers that let you realize, hey, this guy's doing something here where I'm going to take advantage of?
What I say all the time is any plan's better than no plan, right? So come up with a plan ahead of time on how you want to attack your at bat, and then stick with it and write it out. But any plan you can build is better than going up there and just, hoping for the best. So what I would say is you have to recognize the type of hitter you are in terms of what you want to accomplish, right? Like think of Derek Jeter. He was very inside out, really try to just dominate the four hole. And then when he got some of his pitches, then he would let it loose and hit the ball out of the yard. Some other guys were Jose Bautista, right? He would stand right on the top of the plate, and he was very pull heavy, and he looked to get, his arms extended and get the ball into left center and left field. So I think the first piece is recognize the type of hitter you are, and then build your game plan around that. So, if you are a guy that, does really well, hitting the ball to right center field, and you take pitches that are middle away and driving the pitches over there, then we need to formulate our game plan around that. So then you look at the pitcher and you say, okay, is this guy someone who is he going to be attacking the zones that I want to hit at, or is he not, right? Because we don't necessarily care about the pitcher's pitches. All we care about is hitting mistakes. So figure out what type of hitter you are, where you want to attack, and then basically how he's going to attack you, and then combine those three things into figuring out where exactly you want to look and what pitches you want to hit.
Great stuff, Richie. Well, before we go, I do want you to mention some of the things that you're doing too to help out the younger players. You've done a lot on TikTok as well, and putting out that message of how younger players can improve. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I would just say, yeah, go follow me on TikTok. If you want, like Richie.Shaffer on TikTok, because I'm going to be putting out all kind of free stuff there for the mental game, for confidence, for approaches. Some of the stuff we talked about here, going into more detail with that. And trying to do it in a way that's like entertaining to watch, right? Because some of it, talking about the mental side can seem very boring and useless, but like I promise you, as someone who, and I don't even say this in a way that seems, flexing or whatever, but as someone who was really physically talented and and basically hit a ceiling because mentally I was too hot and cold all the time. I can promise you, if you're like in the cage and you just have calluses and blisters all over your hands, but you're doing nothing to like build your mindset, like you're doing it backwards. You're just doing it backwards. So, yeah, that's my two big things are I basically am putting out a ton of free content on TikTok about the mental side of the game. And then for anyone who wants to dive deeper and get really in depth, I'm building out a whole mental training course and system called sixtoolathlete.com. And that'll be my plan with that is basically just to see how many people are interested in getting a really in-depth, detailed version of it, and then launching it whenever we get a little traction with that. So it's the game plan.
Awesome. Well, Richie, I appreciate you hopping on, and thank you for taking the time. Best of luck.
Well, I appreciate it, dude. And hey, keep up the good work, man. It's been really cool to see you grind and keep blowing up, man. I love it.
Appreciate it. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to this episode of Billy the Bat Boy's Corner, presented by Up On Game. Richie Shaffer is obviously somebody who knows a lot about the game of baseball and is really focusing on the mental side of the sport, something that is definitely underrated and should be looked upon a lot more by young athletes. And it seems like the kind of message that he's sending out to these players is something that's going to really help them out a lot in the near future. If you want to check out more about what we're doing here with Up On Game and Billy the Bat Boy's Corner, be sure to follow on social media at Billy the Bat Boy, at Up On Game Network. Don't forget, we are also helping out the Father English Center in Paterson, New Jersey. And don't forget, please subscribe, rate, review, and we'll see you next time here on the show.